March 23, 1945. Wesel, Germany. The acrid smoke of white phosphorus drifted across the Rhine's eastern bank as First Lieutenant Robert Henderson, company commander of Fox Company, 358th Infantry Regiment, 90th Infantry Division, crouched in a hastily dug foxhole, scribbling a letter to his wife in Kansas City. "Darling, by the time you read this, we'll have done what everyone said was impossible. The river that stopped Napoleon won't stop us. Tell Bobby his dad crossed the Rhine with the best soldiers America ever made." Through the thunder of 16-inch naval guns firing from jury-rigged platforms, he had just witnessed the largest single-day river crossing in military history. The 90th Infantry Division, the tough Ombres, traced its lineage to the wheat fields and cattle ranches of Texas and Oklahoma. Activated on March 25, 1942 at Camp Barkley, Texas, the division drew its strength from men who understood hardship, distance, and the unforgiving nature of the land. Their divisional patch, a monogrammed T and O in red on an olive drab square, became synonymous with tenacity. Training began immediately under the command of Major General Henry Terrell, Jr., a West Point graduate who believed that discipline and physical conditioning were the twin pillars of battlefield success. The men endured forced marches of 30 miles carrying 60-pound packs through the Texas heat, where temperatures routinely exceeded 105 degrees. Rifle qualification standards exceeded Army minimums. Every man in the division was required to hit a man-sized target at 300 yards with the M1 Garand, the 8-round, semi-automatic rifle that fired the .30-06 Springfield cartridge with a muzzle velocity of 2,800 feet per second. The 90th Infantry Division was organized according to the standard triangular division structure. 3 infantry regiments, the 357th, 358th, and 359th, each containing 3 battalions of approximately 800 men. Supporting elements included the 343rd, 344th, 345th, and 346th Field Artillery Battalions, equipped with the M2A1 105mm howitzer, capable of hurling a 33-pound high-explosive shell 11,900 yards. The division's tank destroyer battalion wielded the M10 Wolverine, mounting a 3-inch gun on a modified Sherman chassis, while reconnaissance elements rode in M8 Greyhound armored cars armed with 37mm cannons. Daily life at Camp Barkley revolved around the relentless repetition that transformed civilians into soldiers. Reveille sounded at 0500 hours. Physical training, calisthenics, obstacle courses, hand-to-hand combat drills consumed the first 90 minutes. Breakfast was consumed in 15 minutes, powdered eggs, bacon, bread, coffee strong enough to strip paint. Then came weapons training. Every man learned to field strip and reassemble his rifle blindfolded in under 2 minutes. Machine gun crews drilled on the M1917A1 Browning, a water-cooled weapon that fired the .30-06 round at a cyclic rate of 450 rounds per minute from cloth ammunition belts. Squad tactics occupied the afternoons. Men learned fire and movement, one element suppressing the enemy while another maneuvered to flank. They practiced assault drills on mock German pillboxes constructed from railroad ties and sandbags. They learned to identify the distinctive sound of German weapons, the rapid, tearing cloth sound of the MG-42 machine gun firing at 1,200 rounds per minute, the sharp crack of the Mauser K98 rifle, the hollow thump of the 80mm mortar. Evenings brought maintenance. Every weapon was cleaned until it gleamed. Uniforms were pressed. Boots were shined to a mirror finish. Then came mail call, the most anticipated moment of any day, when letters from home reminded these men what they were preparing to fight for. But the 90th Infantry Division faced a crisis that nearly destroyed it before it ever saw combat. When the division shipped to England in March 1944, leadership problems plagued every echelon. Company commanders lacked confidence. Battalion staffs couldn't coordinate supporting fires. Regimental headquarters issued contradictory orders. The division's first combat test, the Normandy invasion, revealed these deficiencies with brutal clarity. The 90th landed on Utah Beach on June 10, 1944, 4 days after D-Day. Within 2 weeks, the division suffered catastrophic casualties, 3,000 men killed, wounded, or missing. Officers led from too far back. Soldiers hugged the ground instead of advancing. Artillery support arrived late or not at all. German defenders, often second-rate infantry or overage garrison troops, stopped attacks cold. Major General J. McKelvey, the division commander, was relieved. His replacement, Brigadier General Eugene Landrum, lasted 27 days before he too was sacked. The third commander, Major General James Van Fleet, transformed the division. A 49-year-old West Point graduate who'd been George Marshall's roommate, Van Fleet understood that broken units could be rebuilt with the right combination of training, leadership, and confidence. He began by relieving 35% of the division's officers, including 2 regimental commanders, 6 battalion commanders, and dozens of company commanders. He replaced them with aggressive leaders who'd proven themselves in combat with other divisions. Van Fleet personally led training exercises behind the lines. He insisted that every officer spend time in frontline foxholes. He established a division school where newly assigned officers learned tactics from veterans. Most importantly, he gave the 90th Infantry Division a series of limited objective attacks designed to build confidence through success. By September 1944, the transformation was complete. The tough Ombres had become one of the most effective divisions in the European theater of operations. The 90th Infantry Division's redemption began in the hedgerows of Normandy. These ancient earthen walls, some dating to Roman times, divided the French countryside into a maze of small fields. Each hedgerow stood 6 to 10 feet high, thick with roots and topped with dense vegetation. They provided perfect defensive positions for German infantry armed with machine guns and Panzerfaust anti-tank rockets. The division's tactics evolved through necessity. Sergeant Curtis Cullen of the 102nd Cavalry Reconnaissance Squadron invented the rhinoceros, steel tusks welded to Sherman tank hulls that allowed the tanks to rip through hedgerows instead of climbing over them, exposing their vulnerable belly armor. Infantry learned to advance in small teams, one squad providing covering fire while another rushed forward, then revering roles in a deadly leapfrog across the Norman landscape. On July 10, 1944, the division captured Hill 122 near Le Desert, a strategically vital position overlooking German supply routes. The fight lasted 18 hours. Private First Class Harold Garman of Company E, 358th Infantry, single-handedly destroyed 2 German machine gun positions with hand grenades, then directed artillery fire that killed 37 enemy soldiers. He received the Distinguished Service Cross. The division pushed south through Perriers, where every stone building became a fortress. Combat was measured in yards, not miles. A typical day's advance covered 500 yards at a cost of 40 casualties. The 359th Infantry fought house to house in Saint-Denis, using Bangalore torpedoes, long tubes packed with high explosives, to blast through walls instead of exposing themselves in doorways. By late July, the division reached the Say River near Villedieu-les-Spirals. Here, the 90th faced elements of the 2nd SS Panzer Division, Das Reich. The Germans counterattacked with 15 Panther tanks, 60-ton monsters mounting 75mm guns capable of penetrating 4 inches of armor at 2,000 yards. The division's tank destroyers engaged at point-blank range. Staff Sergeant Leo Temkin's M10 Wolverine knocked out 3 Panthers in 12 minutes, firing armor-piercing rounds that glowed red-hot from friction as they punched through German steel. The breakthrough came in early August during Operation Cobra, Bradley's plan to rupture the German front. The 90th Infantry Division served as the southern hinge of the breakout, holding defensive positions while Patton's Third Army poured through the gap. For 6 days, the division repulsed repeated German attempts to close the breach. Artillery battalions fired 30,000 rounds in 72 hours. Gun barrels grew so hot they had to be swabbed with water between volleys. When the front finally collapsed, the 90th raced east. They liberated Mayenne on August 5th, capturing 1,200 German soldiers. They crossed the Sarthe River on August 7th against minimal resistance. The German army in France was disintegrating. By mid-August, the division reached the Seine River, where engineers threw Bailey bridges across the current in darkness, while machine gunners sprayed the far bank with suppressive fire. The pursuit continued through late summer. The 90th entered Reims on August 30th, greeted by French civilians who threw flowers and offered wine. Private Leo Marx of Company B, 357th Infantry, wrote to his mother, "They treat us like we're gods. I feel like a fraud, we're just doing our job." But the chase ended at the German border. In September, the division smashed into the West Wall, the Siegfried Line, a belt of reinforced concrete bunkers, dragon's teeth anti-tank obstacles, and minefields stretching from Switzerland to the Netherlands. Progress slowed to a crawl. Pillboxes with 6-foot-thick walls withstood direct hits from 105mm howitzers. German infantry emerged from underground tunnels to attack American positions from behind. The 90th Infantry Division attacked fortified positions near Thionville, a medieval city on the Moselle River. Fort Königsmacher, a 19th-century fortress modernized with steel cupolas and interlocking fields of fire, anchored the German defenses. The 359th Infantry assaulted the fort on November 9th. Engineers blasted through walls with shaped charges. Flamethrower teams cleared bunkers room by room, the jellied gasoline sticking to concrete and burning at 1,200 degrees. The fort fell after 5 days at a cost of 367 casualties. Winter brought new misery. The 90th took up positions along the Moselle in November as temperatures dropped below freezing. Trench foot disabled hundreds of men, the flesh on their feet literally rotting from prolonged exposure to cold and moisture. Soldiers learned to carry extra socks and change them twice daily. Forward observers directing artillery fire suffered frostbite on their fingers from handling frozen binoculars and map cases. Then came the Bulge. On December 16, 1944, Hitler launched his last major offensive in the West, Operation Whacked 'em Rhine, hurling 3 armies through the Ardennes forest in a desperate gamble to split Allied forces and capture Antwerp. The 90th Infantry Division, positioned 120 miles south of the main German thrust, received orders to attack north immediately to relieve pressure on surrounded American units. The division's trucks and half-tracks moved through snow and ice-covered roads. They passed long columns of refugees fleeing west, their worldly possessions piled on horse-drawn carts. German artillery shelled crossroads and river bridges, trying to slow the American advance. The division reached the southern shoulder of the Bulge on December 23rd and immediately attacked northward. The fighting around Bastogne was savage. The 90th assaulted fortified villages held by Volksgrenadier divisions, infantry formations scraped together from training units, convalescent soldiers, and teenagers. Despite inferior training and equipment, the Germans fought with fanatic determination. Every house had to be cleared with grenades and rifle fire. Wounded soldiers froze to death before medics could evacuate them. On January 8, 1945, the 358th Infantry captured the town of Doncalz against elements of the 5th Parachute Division. Staff Sergeant Vito Bertoldo of Company A held a critical road junction alone for 12 hours, repelling 3 German attacks and killing 40 enemy soldiers with rifle fire, grenades, and a captured machine gun. He received the Medal of Honor. By late January, the Bulge had been eliminated. The 90th Infantry Division had advanced 63 miles in 31 days through the worst winter in 40 years, destroying 5 German divisions and capturing 4,300 prisoners. but the final test lay ahead. Before we continue with the climactic crossing of the Rhine, I want to ask you something important. If you're finding value in these deeply researched stories of American valor, please subscribe to this channel. These veteran stories deserve to be remembered. And your subscription helps us continue honoring the greatest generation. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss a story of American courage. Now, let's return to March 1945 and the banks of the Rhine. The Rhine River represented Hitler's last natural barrier. For 2,000 years, armies had faltered at its banks. The river stretched 400 yards wide near Wesel, with currents reaching 6 knots. The eastern bank rose in steep bluffs offering commanding fields of fire. German engineers had demolished every bridge. Underwater obstacles, steel hedgehogs and concrete tetrahedrons, lined the riverbed to rip open landing craft. Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery commanded the Allied assault, Operation Plunder. His plan called for overwhelming force: 30,000 artillery pieces, 3,000 aircraft, and 4 divisions in the initial wave. The 90th Infantry Division drew the critical mission of forcing a crossing at Rheinberg, 8 miles south of Wesel, then driving east to seize the Ruhr industrial region. Preparation began in early March. The division stockpiled 12,000 artillery rounds per gun, enough for a bombardment lasting 72 hours. Engineers assembled 292 assault boats, each capable of carrying 12 infantrymen across the current. Tank battalions moved into concealed positions along the west bank, their guns pre-registered on known German strongpoints. Fighter bombers received target lists for every factory, road junction, and troop concentration within 20 miles of the river. Intelligence reports indicated the Germans had reinforced the east bank with the 116th Panzer Division, equipped with 40 Panther tanks and 30 assault guns. Parachute regiments occupied bunkers and weapon pits. Artillery batteries ranged the river crossings. German gunners had fired registration rounds for weeks, measuring exact distances to probable landing sites. The attack began at 0200 hours on March 24, 1945. Artillery opened with a thunderclap that shook the earth for 30 miles. 16-inch naval guns, dragged inland from coastal batteries, fired shells weighing 2,400 pounds. The projectiles screamed overhead like freight trains, their passage creating shock waves that knocked soldiers off their feet. They impacted on the east bank with eruptions of earth and concrete, each explosion creating a crater 40 feet across and 20 feet deep. The barrage lasted 90 minutes. 40,000 rounds saturated the German positions. Counterbattery fire targeted every identified enemy artillery position. Smoke generators laid a chemical fog across the river, obscuring the crossing sites. At 0330, the first assault boats touched water. Fox Company, 358th Infantry, launched from a beach 200 yards south of Rheinberg. Lieutenant Henderson commanded the lead boat, crammed with 12 riflemen carrying extra ammunition, grenades, and Bangalore torpedoes. Navy coxswains gunned the outboard motors to maximum power, fighting the current that threatened to sweep the boats downstream into German killing zones. German machine guns opened fire 30 seconds into the crossing. Tracer rounds, every fifth bullet coated with phosphorus to glow red-hot in flight, drew arcing lines across the water. Bullets kicked up geysers where they struck the surface. Private Raymond Keeler, sitting next to Henderson, took a round through the helmet. The steel pot deflected the bullet, but the impact knocked him unconscious. Henderson dragged him to the bottom of the boat and kept firing his M1 toward the muzzle flashes on the far shore. The boat grounded on a sandbar 50 yards from the east bank. Henderson vaulted over the side into chest-deep water, holding his rifle over his head. His men followed, wading through the current while bullets snapped past their ears. Corporal James Dietrich stepped on a submerged mine. The explosion tore off his right leg at the knee. Medic Anthony Russo reached him in seconds, applying a tourniquet while under direct fire. Dietrich survived. Henderson's platoon reached the east bank and scrambled up the muddy slope. They found themselves in a wasteland. The artillery barrage had obliterated every structure within 300 yards of the river. Bunkers had collapsed into their own excavations. Trees stood as blackened stumps. Bodies of German soldiers lay scattered among the rubble, some killed by shell fire, others buried alive when their bunkers caved in. But pockets of resistance remained. A concrete pillbox 200 yards inland had survived the bombardment. Its machine gun swept the beach, killing 5 men from Easy Company. Sergeant Mike Colasolo led an assault team forward, using shell craters for cover. They approached to within 20 yards before the pillbox crew spotted them. Colasolo threw a white phosphorus grenade through the firing slit. The interior erupted in white flame that burned at 5,000 degrees. The German crew, 4 men, died screaming. By 0600 hours, the 358th Infantry had established a beachhead 500 yards deep. Engineers landed with Bailey Bridge components and began constructing a span capable of supporting Sherman tanks. The first tanks rolled across at 0900, their 75mm guns providing direct fire support for the advancing infantry. The breakthrough came at Rheinberg itself. The town, once home to 8,000 civilians, had been evacuated by German authorities. Now it served as a fortress. The 116th Panzer Division had positioned 5 Panther tanks in stone buildings, their guns covering the main approaches. German paratroopers occupied the cellars, connected by underground passages that allowed them to move between buildings without exposing themselves to American fire. The 359th Infantry attacked Rheinberg from 3 directions simultaneously. The 1st Battalion assaulted from the north, supported by tank destroyers that fired armor-piercing rounds through walls to kill the Panthers inside. The 2nd Battalion advanced from the west, using flamethrowers to clear buildings. The 3rd Battalion hooked south, cutting the road to mowers and trapping the German garrison. The fight lasted 11 hours. Every building had to be cleared room by room. Soldiers fired rifles from hip level as they kicked down doors. They threw grenades around corners, waited for the explosion, then rushed through the smoke. They climbed stairs in darkness, never knowing if a German soldier waited at the top with a machine pistol. Private First Class Donald Rudolph of Company K, 359th Infantry, earned the Silver Star in Rheinberg. His squad entered a 3-story apartment building and immediately came under fire from the 2nd floor. Rudolph charged up the stairs alone, firing his Browning automatic rifle from the hip. The bar, a 20-pound weapon firing the .30-06 cartridge at 550 rounds per minute, cut down 3 German defenders. Rudolph seized the stairwell, allowing his squad to advance and clear the building. By nightfall, Rheinberg had fallen. The 90th Infantry Division counted 123 dead and 417 wounded. German casualties exceeded 800. The division had captured 63 prisoners, many of them teenagers and men over 45, evidence of Germany's collapsing manpower reserves. But the mission was only beginning. Orders arrived from Corps headquarters: exploit the breakthrough, drive east. Don't stop until you reach the Elbe River, 180 miles distant. The division attacked at dawn on March 25th. Tanks led the advance, followed by infantry riding on half-tracks. Resistance was sporadic. German units were surrendering en masse or fleeing east toward imagined safety. The 90th captured Dorsten on March 26th, Haltern on March 28th, Münster on April 2nd. The pursuit became a race. Columns of German soldiers, some still armed, most having discarded their weapons, clogged the roads. The 90th processed 12,000 prisoners in the first week of April alone. The division established temporary camps in fields and warehouses, guarded by minimal forces while combat units pushed forward. On April 11th, the 90th Infantry Division reached the Elbe River near Magdeburg. They had advanced 184 miles in 18 days, the fastest sustained advance by any American division in the European theater. The war was nearly over. The 90th Infantry Division's final casualty figures told the story of its transformation. From June 1944 to May 1945, the division suffered 18,943 casualties, 3,562 killed in action, 13,791 wounded, and 1,590 missing. These numbers place the 90th among the top 10 American divisions in combat losses, a terrible distinction, but one that reflected the intensity and duration of its combat service. The division's accomplishments matched its sacrifices. The 90th Infantry Division spent 275 days in combat, more than any other American division except the 1st Infantry Division. It advanced from Utah Beach to the Elbe River, covering over 700 miles of enemy territory. It liberated 382 French and German towns. It captured over 119,000 German prisoners. It destroyed or captured 447 enemy tanks and assault guns. Individual valor earned official recognition. The division received 4 Medal of Honor awards. Staff Sergeant Vito Bertoldo for his lone defense of a road junction during the Battle of the Bulge. Private First Class Harold Garman for his assault on German machine gun positions in Normandy. Technical Sergeant Beaufort Anderson for single-handedly destroying a German strongpoint near Lucum. And Private First Class John Lindsay for holding a critical position against overwhelming attack near Hamage. The Distinguished Service Cross, the Army's second highest award for valor, went to 63 soldiers of the 90th Infantry Division. The Silver Star, awarded for gallantry in action, was presented 3,178 times. The Bronze Star for heroic or meritorious service went to 14,287 men. These decorations represented only a fraction of the courage displayed daily by soldiers who did their duty without expectation of recognition. But recognition came slowly for the division itself. The 90th's early failures in Normandy overshadowed its later triumphs. Military historians focused on more glamorous units: the 1st Infantry Division, the 3rd Armored Division, the 101st Airborne Division. The tough Ombres received less attention despite compiling a combat record equal to any. The division's coat of arms told its story symbolically. The red T and O monogram stood for Texas and Oklahoma, but soldiers insisted it meant tough hombres, a deliberate misspelling of the Spanish word hombres, meaning men. The divisional motto, Nous resterons là, French for we shall remain, commemorated the division's tenacious defense during the Battle of the Bulge, when its soldiers held critical positions against repeated German attacks. The 90th Infantry Division occupied Germany for 6 months after VE Day. Soldiers performed occupation duties, enforcing curfews, processing displaced persons, guarding supply depots. They also served as ambassadors, distributing food to hungry civilians and helping rebuild communities devastated by war. Lieutenant Henderson, promoted to captain, supervised the reopening of schools in Magdeburg. He wrote to his wife, "These kids need to learn something other than hate." The division deactivated on December 27, 1945 at Camp Kilmer, New Jersey. Soldiers scattered across America, returning to farms, factories, and universities. They married, raised families, built careers. Most rarely spoke of their service. The memories were too painful, the losses too fresh. Reunions began in the 1950s. Veterans gathered to remember fallen comrades and celebrate their shared survival. They established the 90th Infantry Division Association, publishing newsletters and maintaining contact lists. Annual conventions rotated between cities, drawing hundreds of attendees. As the years passed and attendance dwindled, the gatherings became more precious. Memorials appeared across America and Europe. A stone monument in Rheinberg marks the division's crossing of the Rhine. A plaque in Bastogne honors the division's role in relieving the siege. The National World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C., includes the 90th Infantry Division among the units recognized for exceptional service. The division's lineage continued through Reserve and National Guard formations. The 358th Infantry Regiment remained active in the Army Reserve until 1972. Its colors and battle streamers passed to successor units that carried the traditions forward. Individual soldiers achieved notable success in civilian life. Captain Henderson became a federal judge in Kansas, serving with distinction for 28 years. Staff Sergeant Bertoldo, the Medal of Honor recipient, returned to Illinois and worked as a steelworker, never seeking publicity for his wartime heroism. Private Mark studied engineering on the GI Bill and designed bridges, including a span over the Missouri River that bore his name. But many struggled. Post-traumatic stress, then called combat fatigue or shell shock, afflicted thousands of veterans who'd witnessed horrors no human should endure. They self-medicated with alcohol. They suffered nightmares that replayed battles decades old. They isolated themselves, unable to explain to wives and children what they'd experienced. The Veterans Administration provided minimal mental health support. Most suffered in silence. The legacy of the 90th Infantry Division extends beyond statistics and memorials. The division proved that broken units could be rebuilt, that leadership mattered more than equipment, that ordinary men could perform extraordinary deeds when properly trained and led. Major General Van Fleet's transformation of the division from failure to success became a case study at military academies worldwide. The division also demonstrated the terrible cost of modern warfare: 18,000 casualties in 11 months, an average of 56 men killed or wounded every single day. Entire companies were wiped out and rebuilt multiple times. Some riflemen served only weeks before becoming casualties themselves. The human cost of victory was almost unbearable. The German defenders who faced the 90th Infantry Division at the Rhine learned what American determination looked like when backed by industrial might and unshakable resolve. They fought well, but they fought without hope. Captain Robert Henderson returned home to Kansas City in January 1946. He lived until 2004, dying at age 84. Among his possessions was the letter he'd written on the banks of the Rhine, never sent because he'd lived to deliver the news in person. His son kept it framed in his study, a reminder of what his father and an entire generation had endured. Tell Bobby his dad crossed the Rhine with the best soldiers America ever made. Their story must be remembered, not for glory but for truth. They did what had to be done. They paid the price freedom demands. We owe them our remembrance, our gratitude, and our determination to prove worthy of their sacrifice.